Mr. President, Mr. Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the 2014 Annual Security Review Conference. Before offering a few introductory remarks, I would like to announce that representatives of the media have been invited to this first part of the opening session in order to listen to the opening address of the Chairman in Office, Burkhalter, as well as to the keynote statements of First Deputy Prime Minister Dacic and OSCE Secretary General Lamberto Zanier. I will then ask the media to leave the room before giving the floor to Ambassador Popov and before opening the floor for statements by delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, the current security developments in Europe and the increasing political tensions highlight the need, now more than ever, for a conference that gathers all the relevant stakeholders for high-level discussions on Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian security. The Annual Security Review Conference provides us with a framework for enhancing the security dialogue and for reviewing security work undertaken by the OSCE and its participating states. It is clear we have a lot to talk about in the next few days. Our program over the next 3 days reflects the most pressing security concerns facing the OSCE region, and the agenda of this meeting was carefully negotiated among all participating states. The Ukrainian crisis has been at the forefront of our attention since the beginning of the Swiss chairmanship. The OSCE has been using the full range of its de-escalation instruments, in particular the Special Monitoring Mission for Ukraine, the biggest ever election observation mission, and the continuing facilitation of dialogue. This afternoon's special session will focus specifically on the Ukrainian crisis, its implications for Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian security, and the role of the OSCE. Tomorrow, we have an opportunity to discuss the OSCE's work in the conflict cycle and how to address the specific conflicts within the OSCE region. The afternoon session will examine how to restart discussions on arms control in Europe, something that is needed now more than ever. On Thursday, we'll have the occasion to discuss cooperation on transnational threats, such as counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and trafficking, while our final session will focus on ensuring stability during the transition in Afghanistan. During these sessions, we hope to engage in real dialogue and discussion on these pressing security concerns. Therefore, I'm very pleased to welcome so many high-level participants from the OSCE area, both from participating states and international organizations. Now I would like to extend a special welcome to our esteemed speakers of the opening session, representing the consecutive Swiss and Serbian OSCE chairmanships. The chairperson in office, President of the Swiss Confederation and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, Didier Burkhalter. The first Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Serbia, Ivica Dacic. And, of course, OSCE Secretary General Lamberto Zanier. You are most welcome to the Annual Security Review Conference. I would now like to invite President Burkhalter to address the ASRC. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends from all over the OSCE area, I'm very glad to be here with you. And first of all, and on behalf of the Swiss chairmanship in office, I'd like to thank all of you for being present and for supporting the Swiss chair during this first half of the presidency, first half time, should I say. We are very glad of you being here today in the heart of the OSCE and speaking about security. Today the world speaks a lot about security and about football because of the World Championship. And 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, only 2 years ago in June 2012, Donetsk and Kharkiv were all over the same kind of news. There were 2 of 8 cities selected as venues for the 2012 Football European Championship, jointly organized by Ukraine and Poland at that time. Taken together, the Donbass Arena in Donetsk and the Metalist Stadium in Kharkiv hosted 8 matches featuring the national teams of Ukraine, France, England, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, Mario Gomez, Xabi Alonso, Robin van Persie ranked among the stars scoring in these 2 stadiums. In the last months, ladies and gentlemen, Donetsk and Kharkiv have been again making international headlines, but for very, very different reasons. Part of Ukraine's eastern regions have been shaken by separatist efforts, unlawful activities by armed rebel and criminal groups, a spiral of violence with a growing number of casualties, of suffering, and a deteriorating more and more humanitarian situation. Donetsk airport, which in 2012 welcomed football fans from all over Europe, became the object of heavy fighting just a few weeks ago. There are international monitors in the country now, and the OSCE is seeking to assist Ukraine in de-escalating the situation. Ukraine faces a profound crisis. Its territorial integrity is being disrespected. Economic and energy challenges are mounting, and relations with Russia are strained. Related to this development, European security has deteriorated too. Relations between Russia and the West have taken a negative turn. Sanctions, mutual accusations, threats, mistrust point to the risk of polarization and estrangement. European security as a common project has been put in doubt. The dynamics of the Ukraine crisis has been a painful reminder that peace and security in Europe cannot be taken for granted. Indeed, these dynamics have demonstrated how important it is that we constantly rebuild and preserve peace through cooperative efforts. The past few months have underlined the fact that the OSCE has an important role to play in this regard. Against this background, my main message to you today is that we should collectively work to do 3 things. First of all, assist Ukraine in peacefully resolving this crisis. Second, reconsolidate European security as a common project. And third, strengthen the OSCE as an anchor of cooperative security. Let me address each of these 3 points in turn. First, OSCE assistance to Ukraine. The Ukraine crisis has dominated the Swiss chairmanship from the start. 45 chair-in-office statements on Ukraine alone speak volumes in this regard. We have by no means neglected the other tasks, ladies and gentlemen, the other priorities of the Swiss chairmanship with a famous tableau. For example, I visited the Western Balkans to foster OSCE assistance in the normalization of relations between Belgrade and Pristina and promote regional reconciliation, regional cooperation. Recently, I traveled to the South Caucasus to encourage intensified negotiation on Nagorno-Karabakh and discuss OSCE engagement in Georgia. We have also organized major conferences on Swiss priority issues such as counterterrorism, the prevention of torture, and human rights defenders. Still, Ukraine has topped the agenda since day one. There are 2 reasons for this. First, as a security organization, the OSCE has been directly affected by the development regarding Ukraine. Insecurity of one of the OSCE's participating state, of one country, has rapidly become an issue for all countries, for all member states, in line with the notion of security being indivisible across the OSCE area. OSCE principles, as defined in the final act, in the Helsinki Final Act, have been put into question. These principles include respect for territorial integrity, the inviolability of borders, respect for human rights, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. Second reason, it became clear early on that the OSCE is in a good position to assist Ukraine in overcoming this crisis. The OSCE is no party to the conflict. It is an inclusive platform that brings together all major stakeholders of the crisis to define and implement cooperative solutions. And it is an impartial actor for stability in Ukraine. The OSCE is an organization that can deliver on the ground. So, action and impartiality. The OSCE was present in Ukraine long before the crisis began. As the crisis unfolded, we quickly realized the need to step up OSCE activities. We immediately discussed possibilities with the Ukrainian authorities. In February, I made some proposals at the UN Security Council, including for a contact group. New measures have since been taken, new instruments applied. The OSCE has made full use of the tools at its disposal: special monitoring mission, the visits of High Commissioner on National Minorities, visit of the representative of the freedom of the media, human rights assessment missions by ODIHR, by the HCNM as well, large full-scale election observation mission by ODIHR and by the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE. So all the tools and all of this against the background of a crisis that has considerably evolved in recent months, from the Maidan protests to the Crimean crisis and growing Ukrainian-Russian tension to the destabilization of eastern and southern part of Ukraine and the peace plan of President Poroshenko. At the heart of the OSCE engagement in Ukraine today lies a special monitoring mission. It has been deployed following a request by Ukraine and a consensus decision by you, by the 57 member participating state. You, the center of the responsibility of the OSCE. This consensus decision was a milestone for the OSCE. It indicated that you, the OSCE family, are ready to continue the dialogue and the search for compromise, even in such difficult circumstances. The Special Monitoring Mission has been mandated to contribute to reducing tension and fostering peace, stability and security in Ukraine. Our civilian monitors provide verified information on the security situation and on specific incidents. Their gathering of facts and regular reporting based on the principle of impartiality once more and transparency as well has proven invaluable in a conflict environment where distorted information, biased interpretations and harsh language abound. The Special Monitoring Mission also seeks to facilitate dialogue on the ground. It engages with all levels of authorities as well as with civil society, ethnic, religious group, local communities. Following the joint Geneva statement, preparations have been made to assist Ukraine in disarming illegal groups, illegal armed groups, and in vacating illegally occupied buildings and public places. The OSCE is still ready to do so, provided that Ukraine wishes this kind of OSCE support. Special monitoring mission monitoring teams have been working in shift to ensure cover on the ground around the clock. I wish to thank personally and warm-heartedly as well everyone involved in this mission, including its leadership, for their commitment to our common cause. I'm also grateful to the more than 40 participating states and the 2 Asian partners for cooperation that have seconded monitors and provided the necessary funding for this important mission. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. 4 monitors of the Donetsk team and 4 monitors of the Luhansk team are still missing, ladies and gentlemen. Their detention is unacceptable and illegal. It sabotages the ongoing international efforts to overcome the crisis and binds a significant amount of SMM resources. These monitors came to Ukraine to help. Getting them home safely is a top priority for the SMM, for the OSCE as a whole, and for the Swiss chairmanship. I call again for the immediate and unconditional release, and I call on all sides to work together towards this goal. And I am grateful for the broad support that we have received in that matter. A second important element of the OSCE's assistance to Ukraine concerns its supporting role in the dialogue on national unity. I consider these Ukraine-led and Ukraine-owned efforts to spur an inclusive national debate on the country's challenges and future to be of utmost importance. The 3 roundtables held prior to the elections demonstrated the potential of this approach. Some of the issues discussed, including decentralization, language and minority rights, and constitutional reform as well, reverberate in the Memorandum of Peace and Concord adopted by the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, which provides a solid basis for further steps toward national unity. I am grateful to Ambassador Ischinger for the excellent support he provided to the 2 co-moderators, the former President Kuchma and Kravchuk, during the first phase of this dialogue. I have already discussed with President Poroshenko the possibility of continuing this dialogue. I am ready to nominate a new CIO representative to support the dialogue on national unity as soon as Ukraine resumes this process. The Swiss chairmanship has argued from the beginning that resolving this crisis will require dialogue, not just within Ukraine, but also beyond Ukraine. It is in this context that I proposed an international contact group back in February. It is also in this context that I, as chairman, and my personal envoy, Ambassador Tim Guldiman, have been engaged in bilateral consultation with all sides on how to de-escalate this crisis. But of course, the most important dialogue in this crisis is set between Kiev and Moscow. I consider it to be an encouraging and important sign that President Poroshenko talks directly to President Putin and has established a trilateral contact group with representatives of Ukraine, Russia and the OSCE chairmanship. So where does this leave us today, ladies and gentlemen? The early presidential elections that took place on the 25th of May were a milestone, a very important one for Ukraine. The clear verdict of these elections has improved the prospect for peace. I welcome President Poroshenko's initiative for a ceasefire and for a peace plan. At his request, I asked Ambassador Heidi Tagliavini to represent the OSCE in the tripartite contact group, and after a series of meetings, this group has reached a common understanding on how to enter a peaceful path to settle the situation in the eastern oblast of Ukraine. Heidi Tagliavini is present today and she will participate in the panel about Ukraine this afternoon. The peace plan presented by President Poroshenko builds on this common understanding. I am sure that you have all familiarized yourselves with the details of the plan by now. The OSCE has begun to assess possibilities for assisting Ukraine in implementing this plan and is working on concrete proposals. The SMM has established with many actors in the conflict-ridden areas and could assist with monitoring or even facilitating certain activities of the peace plan if it is wished. To name just a few possible OSCE support roles, it could provide neutral venues for dialogue, monitor the implementation of the amnesty, monitor withdrawal in the secure corridor, provide expertise for disarmament. Many potential OSCE contributions depend, however, very strong on an improved security situation on the ground. For the peace plan to work, we first need the commitment of separatist groups to choose the path of dialogue. Yesterday, after talks with the tripartite contact group, separatist leaders in Donetsk and Luhansk announced that they would observe a ceasefire too. I welcome this development. The OSCE is ready to monitor the ceasefire and to support any other step towards a peaceful settlement of the crisis to the extent possible. I call upon all sides to exercise utmost restraint, and I encourage everyone involved to give peace a chance and resolve differences through dialogue rather than through other and further violence. I am well aware that stability will not return to Ukraine overnight. And the time, ladies and gentlemen, is very short. For President Poroshenko's peace plan to work, all sides will have to make their contributions. Cooperative security is the only way forward, and I have assured President Poroshenko that the OSCE stands ready to play its part. I will meet Minister Klimkin this afternoon and also President Putin this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to my second point. We have to reconsolidate the European security as a common project. The Ukraine crisis has been preceded by a growing crisis of European security. It has not been caused solely by the development regarding Ukraine. Rather, the Ukraine crisis has amplified fissures in Europe that could be observed beforehand. There were disputes over NATO enlargement and strategic missile defense, the erosion of the conventional arms control regime in Europe, disagreement about the legitimacy of a series of military intervention, controversies over declarations of political independence. There were also accusations of broken promises, and there were more and more finger pointed instead of genuine dialogue. All this amounted to an erosion of trust and a weakening of pan-European security. It could be felt in our everyday work here in the OSCE and elsewhere. Does the consensus on European security established with the Paris Charter of 1990 on the basis of the Helsinki Final Act still hold? Or have we gone astray since the CSE heads of state of 1990 declared that the era of confrontation and division in Europe had ended, and that henceforth relation among CSE states would be founded on respect and cooperation? How is it possible that today unilateral actions not compatible with international law are undertaken to change borders in Europe? Why do many countries in the OSCE area still face serious challenges when it comes to implementation of commitments? Why is there still talk of spheres of influences or of buffer zones in European security? My view is this: if the consensus on European security is being questioned or eroding, it is precisely our duty as member of this Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe family to reconsolidate European security as our common project. And the Ukraine crisis should be a wake-up call for all of us. We should not go back to the inert routine of previous years. If we build security at the expense of each other, or even against each other, we will all lose and end up with more insecurity. I have no illusions that reconsolidating European security as a common project will take a lot of time. Much will depend on further developments in the Ukraine crisis. Still, the future of European security will need to be addressed. Dialogue is indispensable to resolving our differences, to engaging in a genuine debate on what our common foundations are, and to making sure that our relations are guided by a sense of partnership. There are three levels of European security that ought to be addressed. First, the normative one. If we assume that OSCE principles and norms are still guiding relations between state as well as between government and their citizens, how can we re-establish the confidence that we will deal with each other in the spirit of respect and cooperation that inspired the Paris Charter? And how can we ensure that states implement their commitments in all three dimensions of the OSCE security with equal rigor? The second level concerns Europe's security architecture. Recent developments have left little doubt that 25 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the strategic task of defining a stable pan-European security system remains a work in progress. I'm not just talking about traditional security, ladies and gentlemen. Equally important and particularly acute is the question of trade relations across the OSCE area. Post-Soviet countries seeking both an association agreement with the EU and access to the market of countries that will form the Eurasian Union should be enabled to act as trade bridges rather than trade frontiers. Devising a European trade architecture that spares these countries from zero-sum choices must be an important component of European security. The third level of European security that needs to be addressed concerns national threat perceptions across the OSCE area. Having a discussion and building a common understanding of threats is an important contribution to reconsolidating European security as a common project. A recent study on the issue by the OSCE Academic Network provides a solid basis for such a debate. The study maintains that while perception of external threats partly diverge in the OSCE area, then perception of domestic and of transnational threats largely converge. I consider this last point particularly important for the future. What it says is this: for all our differences over Ukraine and other major issues of European security, there remains a considerable amount of common interest to build upon. There are many threats, many challenges that we are all confronted with, whether in the Euro-Atlantic or the Eurasian region. We should use this common ground to continue and enhance our cooperation wherever possible. The Ukraine crisis should not prompt us to withdraw from cooperation where common interest persists. Reconsolidating European security as a common project will not just require a genuine debate on those issues on which we disagree, it also depends on our political will to continue cooperating even in the absence of consensus on some of the strategic questions. This too is what cooperative security is all about. And this is how we approach the Swiss chairmanship. The case for continued and intensified cooperation is compelling. Just take the field of transnational threats, which figures high on the common worries list of the OSCE. All countries share similar concerns about the evolving threat of terrorism, for instance. Current activities of terrorist groupings in Iraq, in Syria, in Nigeria, figure high on everyone's security briefings. The OSCE has made some good progress in cooperating on counter-terrorism, but there is still much untapped potential. The Swiss chairmanship proposes, for instance, that OSCE participating states commit to denying terrorists the benefits of ransom and refrain from political concessions. We also see a role for the OSCE in fostering exchange of information and cooperation on the growing challenge of foreign fighters, while respecting human rights and international humanitarian law. We covered these issues at a recent conference in Interlaken. There is also a common interest in defining ways of preventing and managing threats related to cyberspace. The OSCE was the first organization able to agree on a set of confidence-building measures in the field of cybersecurity. These include the exchange of information on national strategies, the establishment of national contact points to facilitate dialogue, and particularly important, a voluntary consultation mechanism to reduce the risk of misperceptions. Let us be ambitious, ladies and gentlemen, and strive for further measures. We should also share our know-how with other organizations and with countries outside the OSCE area. Cooperation should not be limited by institutional and geographical borders. Afghanistan is another case for cooperation. There is a significant overlap of interest among OSCE countries. Within the limits of its mandate and its capacities, the OSCE should contribute to efforts to make Afghanistan stable, secure, and democratic. Training for Afghan border personnel by the Border Management Staff College is just one activity that comes to mind. Ladies and gentlemen, that leads me to the third point. Reconsolidating European security as a common project, in my opinion, also requires strengthening the OSCE as an anchor of cooperative security. Recent events have reminded us there is still some hard work ahead if we are to accomplish our common goal of an OSCE security community. The OSCE as an organization can help advance towards this goal. The more we empower this organization, the better it will be able to help us provide security. The Helsinki Plus 40 process has obviously not become easier in the light of the Ukraine crisis, but there is still scope for progress, and I see this Helsinki Plus 40 progress as a two-track approach. First, it is about strengthening the OSCE capacity to act. The OSCE demonstrated its conflict management capability during the Ukraine crisis. Its expertise and the operational capacities in conflict resolution should be further strengthened and extended. We require institutions that are able to fully put in place the potential available to them. And mediation is key. Mediation is key to the OSCE efforts to settle conflicts across the whole conflict cycle. As a country with much tradition and expertise in this field of mediation, Switzerland is committed to strengthening OSCE mediation capacities. In our chairmanship year, that was a priority, capacity to act in the mediation, but we are also committed to strengthen the OSCE in mediation capacities beyond our year of presidency. Some progress has been achieved on this already. Mediation support capacities have been built up regarding training, knowledge management, operational support, and outreach and cooperation with other mediation actors. There is an OSCE handbook on mediation. There are tailor-made coaching services for OSCE staff and mission, and there is now even an OSCE group of friends of mediation founded under the initiative of Finland, Turkey, and Switzerland. The next step ahead is to alert participating states to the growing potential and capacities of the OSCE in the field of mediation. The mediation support team of the OSCE has been called to assist Ambassador Ischinger in his role in Ukraine's dialogue on national unity. It is ready to assist any successor in this process. Our goal is that it becomes a habit to look to OSCE mediation services whenever international assistance is required in resolving a conflict in the OSCE area. The second track of Helsinki Plus 40 is about using this process as a starting point for a broader discussion of the future of European security. The Astana Summit provided us with a vision of security community. This could inspire an OSCE-wide attempt to take a fresh look at European security architecture. Helsinki Plus 40 should become the starting point, not an ending point, a starting point for reconsolidating European security as a common project and the OSCE as a hub for discussion of all related issues. This deliberation must be conducted in an inclusive manner. The OSCE is an obvious platform to use for this purpose. I'm well aware that this is a longer-term engagement and that would go beyond the Swiss-Serbian consecutive chairmanship and require countries to chair the organization in 2016 and beyond that are willing to take a lead role in raising such issues. One more thought on this. Reconsolidating European security as a common project, in my opinion, also means reviving conventional arms control. No issue of European security is in more need of fresh thinking than conventional arms control, ladies and gentlemen. It's high time that we work out ways of halting and reversing the trend of decreasing military predictability and transparency in our OSCE area. Success in building a verifiable new arms control regime and in agreeing on reciprocal strategic restraint would be a milestone and would help rebuild confidence elsewhere. This may not be the time to discuss the precise role of the OSCE in any new conventional arms control regime, but it is definitely the time to use the OSCE and the marketplace for creative ideas on how to rebuild and reshape such a regime. We have to relaunch this debate. Ladies and gentlemen and dear friends from all the members and partner states, let me conclude. First, I'd like to thank all the speakers and panelists for contributing to this conference. I'm especially grateful to Minister Ivica Dacic for accepting our invitation to address you here. Welcome to the OSCE. We also thank the Secretariat for contributing to the organization of this important event. Thanks to you, Mr. Zanier, and to your team. And thank you for the collaboration every day. And thank you all for coming. I know that you expect a lot of us. As Swiss chairperson in office, let me say that I also expect a lot of you. We are gathering here at a time marked by the Ukraine crisis and a wider crisis of European security. It is our common responsibility to do everything possible to resolve this crisis. The bottom line of my message today is that the OSCE can play a constructive role In either case, the OSCE's recent activities in Ukraine have demonstrated the organization's potential to build bridges both among participating states and on the ground. The challenges we are facing are formidable, but there are also opportunities. If we manage to deal with these challenges in a spirit of cooperative security, then we can emerge with enhanced security for all of us. The next few weeks might be decisive for the future of Ukraine. The coming months and the coming years will be essential for the future course of European security, and this also touches upon the question on the future role of this organization. I count on your commitment to help de-escalate the situation in Ukraine, to reconsolidate European security as a common project, and to strengthen the OSCE as an anchor of cooperative security. Thank you very much and have a very good day.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your opening address. I would now like to turn to the first Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Serbia, Ivica Dačić. Serbia is taking over the chairmanship in 2015, and your presence, Minister, is another sign of the close cooperation between the Swiss and the Serbian consecutive chairmanship. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, Secretary General, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank President Burkhalter for the invitation to open together the OSCE Annual Security Review Conference, which is certainly the most important event within the political military dimension. I am pleased to know that Switzerland and Serbia have so far cooperated well within the framework of our consecutive chairmanships in 2014 and 2015, as well as in the implementation of the activities envisaged by the joint work plan. I would like to take this opportunity to point out that the chairmanship of the OSCE is a great opportunity for Serbia and probably the most challenging multilateral task that we have undertaken so far. To that end, we have embarked upon very serious and extensive preparations, and we are ready to fully contribute to the organization in an active and impartial manner. I am confident that as the upcoming Serbian chairmanship is approaching, our cooperation will be enhanced and that this year's valuable experience of Switzerland will significantly contribute to our efforts to implement as successfully as possible the priorities of our chairmanships next year when we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act. In this context, I expect that the conference will help us better perceive the prospects for solution of the most pressing security issues in the OSCE region, as well as the future role of the OSCE in the international security architecture. This year, the Annual Security Review Conference is taking place at the time of one of the biggest challenges in the OSCE region since the inception of the organization. It is safe to say that in these very specific circumstances, the theme of the conference requires constructive engagement and intensified efforts of the participating states, both on political and operational level. Discussions on revitalizing the role of the OSCE through Helsinki Plus 40 process, which started last year, should also include reflection on current events and the relevant experience of the organization. The current security situation in and around the OSCE region indicates the necessity of an objective assessment of all security aspects and their potential implications. Also, there is a need to strengthen the capacities of the OSCE, which would enable adequate support in an effective and timely manner in all phases of the conflict cycle, ranging from early warning to post-conflict rehabilitation and reconciliation. The contribution of the organization to the resolution of crisis and the establishment of security and stability in the OSCE region would thus be more concrete and tangible. I would also like to take this opportunity to underline that we should all work together to strengthen the dialogue, because OSCE was established as and remains the broadest platform for dialogue on all security issues from Vancouver to Vladivostok, including the dialogue with our Mediterranean and Asian partners. Dialogue, as much as it is an essential element, is just necessary prerequisite for achieving and implementing adequate solutions based on consensus. I believe that our experience during the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue under the auspices of the EU, which is currently underway, and particularly efforts invested towards improving daily lives of local population and ensuring their basic human rights, may be of use for future efforts aimed at solving many problems. In the context of the current crisis in Ukraine, I would like to emphasize that Serbia supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all UN member states. Adoption of the decision on the establishment and deployment of the OSCE Special Observation Mission to Ukraine is an example of a positive outcome of a comprehensive dialogue among the participating states. It demonstrates that the organization is capable of responding to a crisis in a relatively short period of time in an appropriate and flexible manner. Serbia appreciates the OSCE engagement in Ukraine so far and expects that it will contribute to the normalization of the situation on the ground. Serbia strongly supports the coordinated activities of the OSCE aimed at de-escalating the crisis, establishing an inclusive dialogue and supporting the internal processes, the objective of which is to stabilize the situation in Ukraine. Within this framework, we believe it is of utmost importance to cease hostilities, and we welcome the plan of President Poroshenko for peaceful resolution of the crisis. It offers an opportunity to improve internal dialogue and strengthen institutions while taking into account the interests of all citizens. I would like to take this opportunity to support the activities of the Swiss chairmanships aimed at de-escalating the crisis. President Burkhalter and our Swiss colleagues have undertaken a number of activities at the highest political level aimed at resolving the crisis through peaceful political and diplomatic means. During our chairmanship, we are ready to assume responsibility and continue working towards full stabilization of the situation in Ukraine. We believe that the OSCE activities in relation to the crisis in Ukraine are also an opportunity for our organization, not only to enhance its visibility, but also its new potential role in the Euro-Atlantic and Euro-Asian security space. Mr. Chairman, political tensions and conflicts, both within the OSCE region and beyond, continue to have an adverse effect. Although the crisis in Ukraine has largely dominated the discussions within the OSCE, Serbia deems necessary to provide active support to the existing negotiating formats for the resolution of protracted conflicts. We will explore all avenues for reaching compromise solution acceptable to all parties. To this end, we consider important the role of special representatives of the chairman in office, where Serbia provided in contribution within the framework of the Swiss chairmanship. Strengthening the OSCE capacities and mechanisms to actively respond in all phases of the conflict cycle, from early warning to post-conflict rehabilitation and reconciliation, and to achieve concrete results in terms of stabilizing the situation on the ground remains a priority. In view of the experience of the Western Balkans, I wish to point out that concrete and sustainable solution can only be reached through constructive political action and dialogue. On this occasion, I would like to mention that we support the renewed, more systematic efforts of the OSCE in strengthening mediation activities. In this regard, I wish to underline once again the significance of political will for mediation efforts to be successful. Mr. Chairman, the implementation of commitments taken within the framework of politico-military dimension represents an important factor of stability, transparency and confidence among the OSCE participating states. Arms control and confidence and security building measures remain vital for the improvement of security in our region, and it is in the interest of all participating states to continue their implementation. We are convinced that the OSCE, particularly in the framework of the Forum for Security Cooperation, has the capacity to contribute to the activities in the field of arms control and confidence building within the European security architecture. During our chairmanship, Serbia will work in a coordinated manner with Mongolia, Montenegro and Norway, the countries which will chair the Forum for Security Cooperation during 2015. We believe that different regional affiliation of these three FSC chairs will provide additional quality and contribute to a more diverse perception of issues on the agenda of the forum. In light of the significant technological changes, as well as new risks, challenges and threats at the beginning of the 21st century, we are aware of the need to revitalize, update and modernize the relevant OSCE documents. Compliance with the principles and obligations stemming from these documents and their consistent implementation remains essential. In that sense, as defined by the priorities in the joint work plan of Switzerland and Serbia, we are committed to continuing a comprehensive dialogue within the OSCE in order to maintain military stability, predictability and transparency by updating and modernizing the Vienna document, strengthening and implementing the Code of Conduct on political military aspects of security, as well as OSCE documents on small arms and light weapons and stockpiles of conventional ammunition. The above documents, which are the basis for confidence building and security in the OSCE region, should be modernized in accordance with current military and security conditions in the OSCE region. Mr. Chairman, today we are faced with new challenges, risks and threats which are of transnational character. These threats, such as terrorism, organized crime, human trafficking, drug trafficking, etc., know no borders and require coordinated cooperation in the participating states. I want to emphasize the role of the organization which, realizing the importance of countering transnational threats, undertook significant steps in recent years through adoption of relevant decisions, exchange of experience and best practices, establishment of cooperation between competent institutions of the participating states, as well as the academic institutions. I would like to use this opportunity to commend the OSCE network of academic institutions and its study on perceptions of threats on the OSCE region. I note with satisfaction that a think tank from Serbia also took part in the preparation of the study. The first task of the network of academic institutions is a step in the right direction in terms of integration of the so-called Track 2 diplomacy into the work of our organization. Given the evolving nature on the need for constant monitoring and adjustment of responses to these threats, during the Serbian chairmanship, we plan to carry out a number of activities in this field. We intend to deal with transnational challenges and threats from a cross-dimensional perspective. It is not possible to treat negative phenomena such as corruption and illegal migration in isolation. We can counter them through strengthening democratic institutions. We also need to understand the role organized crime plays in spreading the above-mentioned negative phenomena. Police plays a significant role in this fight, but only together with the judiciary. OSCE is well positioned to serve as a platform for the promoting of the above-mentioned cooperation between the law enforcement agencies and judiciary. Prevention is one of the most significant phases in combating transnational threats, and we should concentrate more on the role of women and youth in this process. We wholeheartedly embraced the proposal of our Swiss colleagues based on the activities already undertaken in the UN to further the work on the concept of security sector governance and reform in the OSCE, particularly in the area of civil control of security forces. In the context of transnational threats, it is particularly important to cooperate with other relevant international organizations in a coordinated and complementary manner. OSCE should find a niche to act and continue to develop capacities for response to new challenges and threats. A good example in this regard is a pioneer endeavor of the OSCE on confidence-building measures in the field of ICT, cybersecurity. Before I conclude, I would like to emphasize once again that current complex challenges require joint responses. No one can successfully overcome the aforementioned challenges on their own. OSCE, with its flexibility and mechanisms, can offer tailor-made solutions while taking into account the interests of all participating states. Serbia is ready, together with others, to work hard to improve the capabilities of the OSCE and to offer relevant responses to the issues of collective security in the 21st century. I would like to conclude to underlining that I fully share the position of President Burkhalter that our joint action should be focused in three directions: assisting Ukraine in peaceful resolving the crisis, reconsolidating European security as a common project, and strengthening the OSCE as an anchor of cooperative security. In this regard, Helsinki Plus 40 process represents a framework for strengthening the organization as such, which should not be neglected. We believe that this process should continue precisely because of the challenges we have been facing in the past months. We are convinced that the roadmap is still valid, and particularly the goals set in its introductory part. Therefore, we should seize the opportunity, strengthen our dialogue, mutual engagement, and come to broadly acceptable solutions in a constructive manner. I wish you all successful work during this conference. As an incoming chairmanship, we will strive to incorporate the consensus-based results and recommendations of the conference in our work plan and the priorities for the 2015, which I will present at the Permanent Council in, I think, mid-July this year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Minister, thank you for your keynote statement. I now turn to our third speaker, OSCE Secretary General Lamberto Zanier. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. President Burkhalter, Minister Dacic, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to add my welcome to all participants, especially those of you who have traveled from capitals to attend this important event. I would like to thank both our chairperson in office and the incoming chairperson for their incisive remarks on the role of the OSCE in addressing current security challenges facing our region. The theme of this review conference, fostering security and stability, has special resonance this year. The purpose of the annual Security Review Conference, as set out in the Porto Ministerial Council decision that established it, is to provide a framework for enhancing security dialogue and for reviewing security work undertaken by the OSCE and its participating states. This annual stock-taking is a useful exercise, but this year in particular, the goal of enhancing dialogue on security is especially important. The crisis in and around Ukraine has revealed a deep rift within our region that is also apparent in our organization. Yet, the OSCE is the only regional organization that includes Ukraine and all its neighbors, plus other key players. Although the organization's unity of purpose is being tested, its role as an inclusive platform for dialogue and joint action is now more critical than ever. The OSCE's entire toolbox has come into play in Ukraine, further demonstrating the organization's relevance. Starting already back in February, both the High Commissioner and the representative on freedom of the media made several visits to Ukraine to assess the situation of national minorities and media freedom, including in Crimea. The High Commissioner and the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights deployed a joint human rights assessment mission. ODIHR also fielded its largest observation mission ever, with over 1,000 observers for the May 25th presidential elections. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly contributed with a high-level election observation mission. The Vienna document has also been used extensively in the context of the Ukrainian crisis. Back in March, we demonstrated foresight by initiating a national dialogue project which looked for ways to de-emphasize the divisions within Ukraine and address common concerns through dialogue. This project clearly indicated that dialogue was urgently needed at many levels, and it helped to lay the groundwork for both the special monitoring mission to Ukraine and the national roundtables co-moderated by former Ukrainian presidents Kuchma and Kravchuk in the run-up to the May 25th election. The roundtables were initially supported by Ambassador Wolfgang Ischinger on behalf of the Swiss chairmanship, as well as by the Special Monitoring Mission, the Conflict Prevention Center's mediation support capability, and the project coordinator in Ukraine. It is essential now for this dialogue process to continue. The Office of the Project Coordinator also has projects in the pipeline to help Ukraine's new government build capacities and promote reform in several key areas. On March 21st, the Permanent Council authorized a special monitoring mission to Ukraine to gather information and to provide unbiased reporting on security conditions. Within hours of the PC decision, an advanced team was on the ground in Ukraine. Within 4 days, The first 4 monitoring teams were working in the field. In just over a week, monitoring teams were present in all 10 locations specified in the PC decision, and the initial 100 monitors were deployed within a month. It is worth noting that this speedy rollout was possible thanks to efforts by the Secretariat to operationalize Ministerial Council Decision 311 on elements of the conflict cycle. Several steps were particularly important, including a staff instruction on rapid deployment of OSCE human resources for early action that set out procedures for swift temporary deployment of first responders. The establishment of a virtual pool of equipment that could be quickly mobilized, and an operational framework for crisis response that enabled the rapid deployment of an implementation plan and budget for the special monitoring mission. These are all tools that will serve the organization well also in future. I should also mention that throughout the Ukraine crisis, we have maintained close contacts and coordinated our efforts with other stakeholders, including the United Nations. The OSCE's multi-level and multi-track efforts to restore peace and stability in Ukraine have amply demonstrated that regional organizations can and do play a leading role in crisis management and resolution in their regions, as envisaged in Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter. And this was one of the key conclusions of our recent OSCE Security Day, devoted to exploring ways to revitalize cooperation between the United Nations and regional organizations under Chapter 8. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, although Ukraine has been the OSCE's central focus in recent months, we must not forget our other priorities. We continue to face traditional political military security challenges within our region. At the same time, we must also contend with a range of increasingly complex and intertwined transnational threats and challenges. And instability on our periphery affects security in the OSCE region. Allow me now to turn to these challenges. On arms control and CBMs, Ambassador Popov, chairperson of the Forum for Security Cooperation, will deliver his report shortly, so I will limit myself to some brief comments. The persistent impasse over conventional arms control remains a cause for concern. It has a negative impact on security in our region, eroding trust and confidence in the military sphere and undermining military stability, transparency and predictability. Strengthening arms control and CSBMs remains a long-term endeavor, and political commitments to efforts in this field should be upheld. As I have noted on a number of other occasions, the arms control debate needs to be revitalized and broadened. In this regard, the OSCE could play a significant role as an inclusive platform for dialogue that is unmatched by other organizations. As to the debate itself, the focus may need to shift from a purely quantitative to a more qualitative approach, and greater flexibility and creativity will be essential. If a diversified regime is envisaged, then coherence must prevail. Such a regime could encompass a mix of political and legal arrangements and or include different elements tailor-made for different regions and sub-regions. To help define the outlines of a formal arms control debate, I'm ready to host an OSCE Security Days event devoted to the issue when the time is ripe. The OSCE Academic Network could also be called upon to provide some fresh thinking on this issue. On transnational threats, contemporary challenges to security from terrorism, organized crime and trafficking in illicit drugs and human beings pose a growing threat to the OSCE region. In response, the organization has significantly strengthened its capacity to combat these transnational threats. Last year, the participating states adopted an initial set of confidence-building measures to reduce the risk of conflicts stemming from the use of information communication technologies. In this, the OSCE was a pioneer, the first international organization to develop and agree on a set of cyber CBMs. We are now implementing these CBMs, and we have begun to work on developing another set. Because information sharing among law enforcement authorities is critical to combating transnational threats, we're establishing a network of law enforcement institutions throughout the OSCE area. This will enable them to pool their expertise and findings about transnational crimes, as well as to share relevant training curricula via the internet. Meanwhile, we continue to provide tailored assistance to participating states across the OSCE region, as well as to partner for cooperation to help them address the growing challenges that terrorists, drug traffickers and other criminals pose to the security of their societies. We're also engaged with interested participating states and partners in working towards the establishment of an OSCE Center for Excellence in Policing and the facility for capacity building on rule of law and anti-terrorism in the Mediterranean. The OSCE could and should be used as a platform for dialogue among heads of police, border management services, anti-narcotic, counter-terrorism and other law enforcement authorities. But there is more than we can do. For example, we are working to strengthen public-private partnerships to combat transnational threats while ensuring that the rule of law is upheld and human rights and fundamental freedoms are respected. We're discussing plans to convene a meeting of participating states, partners of cooperation, and influential representatives of the private sector to identify basic principles for public-private partnerships in tackling transnational threats in the OSCE region. As challenges in the OSCE larger neighborhood grow, we are developing a more strategic approach to adjacent regions and strengthening relationship with our partners for cooperation in Asia and the Mediterranean. Afghanistan is entering a new stage of its transformation. It will soon have a new president, and the withdrawal of ISAF forces is imminent. I regard the fact that the OSCE, through ODIHR, provided support to the election process as a very positive contribution. But security remains precarious in Afghanistan, which has a direct impact on security in Central Asia and indirectly on the larger OSCE region. Strengthening security in and around Afghanistan calls for regional cooperation. The OSCE offers the international community a solid platform for dialogue and practical cooperation among all stakeholders. We continue to provide targeted support in critical areas to promote regional security, stability and economic development. Our field presences in Central Asia, the OSCE Academy in Bishkek and the Border Management Staff College in Dushanbe are strengthening local capacities and creating networks among experts in Afghanistan and the Central Asian states. With a stable source of funding, the Border Management Staff College could make full use of its potential and develop into a fully fledged institution devoted to tackling transnational threats in the region. We've also considered establishing a research center in the region focused on Afghanistan to help us develop a deeper understanding of the challenges of its transformation and their impact on its Central Asian neighbors, which would inform our efforts to strengthen regional security and stability. As Afghanistan embarks on the next phase of its transformation, the OSCE should continue to offer opportunities for cooperation and inclusive dialogue in the region. Strengthening security and stability in Afghanistan is in the interest of all participating states. I am currently in discussions with the Wilson Center, an eminent US think tank, on co-sponsoring an OSCE Security Days event in Washington, D.C. early next year as a follow-up to the event we held last year here in Vienna. A strong focus could be on effective border management as a tool to enhance security, stability, and economic development in Afghanistan and throughout Central Asia. And this would be the first OSCE Security Days event to be held outside of Vienna. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I would also like to say a word about the Helsinki Plus 40 process. I fully support the efforts of the Swiss chairmanship and also the plans of the upcoming Serbian chairmanship to advance the process despite the unexpected challenges that have arisen. There are plenty of issues where constructive work can be done at the strategic and operational levels, including with regard to the conflict cycle and improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the organization. At the same time, we must not abandon our efforts to work towards the Astana vision of a free, democratic, and indivisible security community anchored in agreed principles, shared commitments, and common goals. And it is exactly because of the obstacles that have arisen, slowing our process toward that vision, that our effort remain more important than ever. We have a full agenda this week. The OSCE's role as an inclusive and impartial platform for dialogue and joint action is one of the organization's core strengths, one that sets us apart from other regional security organizations. The SRC provides an excellent opportunity to utilize this capacity to the fullest. So I look forward to productive discussions, both in this room and in the margins of the meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Secretary General. This concludes the presentations of our keynote speakers. I would now kindly request the representatives of the media to leave the room.